Distinguished guests, members of the faculty, and my dear friends, welcome to the second day of Conventus 2020, the annual management conclave of International Management Institute, New Delhi. The COVID 19 pandemic has brought the world to a screeching halt. Institutions, corporations, and governments alike are getting accustomed to this new normal. Conventus is a legacy that we at IMI New Delhi are determined to continue, come what may. And in that very spirit, we are proud to announce for the first time, Conventus is being held online. My fellow compare Varun Batra and I, Priyam Agarwal, shall take you through the Consulting and Strategy Summit of Conventus 20. This year, Conventus is structured around the theme Survival and Growth in the VUCA World, Adaptability, Agility, and Sustainability.
The acronym VUCA, which stands for Volatility, Uncertainty, Complexity, and Ambiguity, has gained massive popularity in the business world over the past few decades. The VUCA world demands leaders to come up with realistic and applicable solutions. Firstly, by tackling volatility with a visionary approach and by not allowing small roadblocks to come in the way of the overarching vision. Further, businesses need to gauge uncertainty by bridging the gap between the causes and their effects. Firms can counter complexity by breaking down the loops of reactions and promoting proactivity towards solving problems. To conquer ambiguity, continuous learning and swiftness in decision making is key.
For years, we have seen industries change entire business plans overnight to match current market trends. The 2002 market crash has had disastrous effects on various industries. Similarly, the 2008 financial crisis had detrimental socio-economic effects on the world. A common factor in both the situations is how unprepared it left everyone. As it is rightly said, the best way to come out of a crisis is on top. And the one way to do that is by staying constantly vigilant. As future leaders, understanding how to tackle these four elements will give us the opportunity to stay ahead of the curve. Survival in a VUCA world is the need of the hour, and growth is the true way forward. Before we proceed further into the session, let us have a look at the Conventus video.
Business often takes inspiration from the art of war strategies. Gone are the days when a single textbook solution could work all molds. Challenges have become multifaceted. As experienced by the US Army during the Cold War, VUCA, an acronym describing how less they knew or could think regarding situations. COVID-19 pandemic has thrown the world into disarray. Everything has become increasingly unstable. The concept of clarity is muddled. Predicting the future is nearly impossible. Interconnectivity is more chaotic than ever. So, how do you plan on coping with the new normal?
To share with us their valuable insights, we are honored to have amongst us Mr. Ajay Chaturvedi, Mr. Debabrat Mishra, Mr. Ashutosh Inamdar, Ms. Sweta Murarka, Mr. Balaji Vishwanathan, Mr. Vishwas Mishra, and Dr. Vijay Vancheshwar.
Before we begin with the session, we would like to give a brief introduction of our distinguished panelists. We are delighted to introduce you all to our first panelist, Mr. Ajay Chaturvedi, founder and chairman, Harvard. Harvard is a group of dynamic and creative individuals who are determined to improve the lifestyle of rural India. To achieve their goal, Harvard looks for business opportunities, keeping labor arbitrage as its backbone, to bring about a positive change in rural India, which faces significant social and economic challenges. Mr. Ajay started Harvard in 2010 after a highly successful career as the director and chief of strategy at Citibank. He was honored by the World Economic Forum as a Young Global Leader 2013 to 18. He was also awarded the CNN IBN Youth Icon of the Year 2011. Mr. Ajay is an engineer from BITS Pilani and a graduate in Management of Technology from the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, and holds a diploma in Global Leadership and Public Policy from the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. Sir, we are honored to have you here with us today, and we welcome you to Conventus'20.
Thank you.
It is a privilege to introduce Mr. Debabrat Mishra, Strategic Advisor, Tribo Project. Mr. Debabrat Mishra currently serves as the advisory board member of multiple organizations such as VSOR, Digital Media Company, and Velocita Brand Consulting, focusing on helping business leaders and startup founders to create a lasting legacy. Mr. Debabrat has more than 25 years of consulting experience. He was aligned with the organization transformation and talent service line within Deloitte. His broad human capital experience includes consulting work across leadership assessment and development, organization improvement, HR delivery, and strategic change. Before joining Deloitte, he worked with Korn Ferry Hay Group, PwC, Arthur Andersen, and Hewitt. Mr. Debabrat completed his post-graduation from XIMB in 1991. So we are honored to have you here with us today, and we welcome you to Conventus'20.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
It gives me a great honor to introduce our next panelist, Mr. Ashutosh Inamdar, General Manager, Strategy Cell, Lupin Global. Mr. Ashutosh Inamdar leads the digital and innovation initiatives for the domestic business. Mr. Ashutosh plays a pivotal role in shaping the digital strategy at Lupin India and leveraging technology in enhancing customer engagement. He has more than 10 years of experience as a strategist and helps in improving business processes through technological intervention. He has also worked in business planning, corporate strategy, business development, and commercial negotiations. Before joining Lupin Global, he worked with Mahindra and Mahindra, Gammon India Limited, Infrasoft Technologies, and Verizon. Mr. Ashutosh completed his post-graduation from IIM Indore in 2009 with a specialization in strategy, consulting, finance, and marketing. Sir, we are honored to have you here with us today, and we welcome you to Conventus'20.
Thanks.
It is a
Thanks.
privilege. It is a privilege to introduce Ms. Sweta Murarka, Head of Global Banking, Bangalore and Gonzao Global Co-Chair, Balance HSBC. Ms. Sweta Murarka is an award-winning investment banker and business leader. She is known for her visionary leadership and strategic thinking, having set up and led various businesses to success. She is an all-India rank-holding chartered accountant with 18 years of experience in investment banking, audit, and retail banking across large organizations like HSBC, Goldman Sachs, PwC, and ICICI. Ms. Sweta is currently heading the investment banking, portfolio analytics, CRM, and transformation team of over 300 employees spread across Bangalore, Guangzhou, and Manila. Before this, she was co-head investment banking and sector lead financial institutions for the team in Bangalore. She has experience in executing strategic disposal for HSBC, M&A transactions for financial institutions and general industrial clients globally. Ma'am, we are honored to have you here with us today, and we welcome you to Conventus'20.
Thanks, Priyam. Looking forward.
It is an honor to introduce Mr. Balaji Vishwanathan. Mr. Balaji is the founder and Chief Executive Officer of Invento Robotics, a tech venture to be a pioneer in the emerging field of AI-enabled hardware. To achieve its goal, Invento Robotics launched Mitra, India's first humanoid robot built and designed to engage in hospitality management and workplace productivity. Mitra made its first appearance at the Global Entrepreneurship Summit in 2017, where it greeted Ivanka Trump, senior advisor to the US President, and interacted with the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Mr. Balaji started Invento Robotics in mid-2016 and has shown brilliance in various sectors ranging from edtech to fintech. This was after starting his career at Microsoft back in 2006. Along with his professional journey, he has risen as the most followed person on Quora. Mr. Balaji is a computer engineer with two full-time master degrees, an MS from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and an MBA from Babson College. Sir, we are honored to have you here with us today, and we welcome you to Conventus'20.
It is a privilege to introduce Mr. Vishwas Mishra. It is a privilege to introduce Mr. Vishwas Mishra, Senior Director and Lead at Bain Capability Network and Supply Chain Team. He leads his expertise in both management and industry consulting as he leads 5 consulting practices which focus on optimization of operational functions which include supply chain and Bain accelerated transformation. His profession has witnessed various collaborations with several industries such as retail, consumer goods, electronics, etc. With his career spanning over 20 years, Mr. Vishwas has developed innovative and game-changing strategies through his extensive knowledge of analytics and has been rewarded for the same through innovation awards and patent grants. His proficiency has been recognized in organizations such as Accenture and HP. Mr. Vishwas is an alumnus of MDI Gurgaon and in Seed, France. So we are honored to have you here with us today and we welcome you to Conventus'20.
Thank you.
It is an honor to introduce our next panelist and the moderator for the session, Dr. Vijay Vancheshwar, Professor, Strategy and General Management, IMI, New Delhi. Dr. Vijay Vancheshwar holds a doctorate in the area of customer and market-centric total quality management and a master's in management sciences and systems from IIT Delhi. He joined IMI Delhi as a professor in 2011. Before that, he held the position of group head and vice president with the GMR Group and Gammon India. He has also been a lead presenter on behalf of the corporate sectors on topical issues across device, print, television, and related media channels in conferences and seminars. During his corporate career spanning over 25 years, he has worked in large multinational and Indian organizations including ABB, Dabur Power, and DLF. During these corporate tenures, he was actively associated with management institutes, which include IMI, MDI, and IAMC as an external visiting faculty. Sir, we are honored to have you here with us today, and we welcome you to Conventus'20.
Thank you.
In the light of the main theme, it is essential to discuss how current situation has left all of us wondering how to adjust to the new normal and how the world will function post this unprecedented crisis. The situation reflects these strategies persisting previously will be incapacitated. Therefore, the need of the hour is to develop innovative strategies that are more adaptive, less volatile, and agile to the dynamic scenarios. Business leaders will have to actively work to expand their thinking away from what has traditionally been done and include ideas and systems that may never have been considered. Business leaders must begin questioning everything from rethinking their strategies and business models to investing in their right opportunities, enabling not only to survive this unparalleled anomalous situation, but also to dominate their way through this crisis. The challenge is not to imbibe this newness, but to thrive in this transient economy. On the optimistic note, as Winston Churchill once said, never let a good crisis go to waste. We would now like to introduce the topic for the discussion in this session of Strategy Conclave, Fixing the Broken, Strategize Not to Survive, but to Dominate in the VUCA World. May we request the moderator to this session, Dr. Vijay Vancheshwar, to please take over.
Yeah. Thank you and welcome everybody. I am delighted to have you all here, and more so particularly you have an excellent team of panelists from a wide range of sectors, which I'm sure will add value to our discussions today. We are going through turbulent times, that's been often repeated and said, but then that's an opportunity for us. So I thought we should start with, we've heard about Rudyard Kipling, the great poet in UK, England, about 100 years old. And one of his famous lines is put at the center of the center court as players come in to play the Wimbledon final, the croquet and tennis club. When they come in, the line reads, And it is from the poem If. The line reads, if you can meet triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same. It's just one quotation. If you can meet triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same. It goes on, and the poem ends with this interesting line. Yours is the earth, and you will be a man, my son. So he had written it to his son, meaning one shouldn't get too elated when things go well, nor should one get too despondent if things go wrong. And that's the way life is. It's uncertain, and we are experiencing that. But it's an experience that should make us richer, bolder, and more mature. So while we are talking about VUCA, the volatility, the uncertainty, the complexity, and the ambiguity, I thought what distinguishes, to my mind, good companies, successful companies, are essentially four key attributes. One, purpose, a sense of purpose. It's also relevant for us in our own life, not only for companies. A sense of purpose translated into a vision. Where do you want to go? Purpose, number one. Number two is about clarity. Clarity in actions, clarity in thought, and therefore clarity in the short and long term. Number three, agility. Agility in response. So purpose, clarity, agility, backed by the most important thing, principles. Principles as characterized by ethos. Great companies become much greater. Companies do well, but they don't survive. The survey shows that companies which existed, let's say, 50 years back are no more there. Because good companies are backed by sound principles. So we're talking about purpose, clarity, agility, and principles. And the focus here, even in those lines, is focus on virtuous companies rather than perfection. You can't always be perfect, but if you focus on virtuosity, you're certainly going to succeed. So this is important to keep in mind as a backdrop when we discuss. So having said that, I'm delighted to have our 6 panelists here, and I'm sure we can get a wealth of information on what they have to say on some of these things. We'll start with each panelist, and they will give their perspectives. And again, in this context, I think it's very important that we focus on lessons learned from failures and challenges. It's easy to gloat and go overboard on successes, but life is, as we all know, dynamic, and we have to be ready. We are tested when we are in troubled times, but the tough ones come through with it, with focus on principles, purpose, clarity, and agility. So the lesson learned from failures or challenges is important. And of course, we have a wide range of sectors. We'll get a perspective ranging from banks to the NGO to the technology-driven companies to supply chain experts and the NGOs and the other pharmaceuticals. So let me now start with Balaji. Balaji, as you know, Balaji Vishwanathan is heading this Inventor Robotics, and it's an interesting line, Balaji. And we are talking about how robotics is taking over, whether it's manufacturing, maybe even in our daily life, who knows? With the way things are happening, it would soon be a virtual world rather than a face-to-face. So Balaji, if you can kickstart the discussions with you, if you can tell us in about 5 minutes, 2 things. Number one, of course, as I said, the one lesson that you've really learned through challenges or a failure, which has made you stronger. And second, the role of humanoids, since you're in that, will it mean that with human interactions being drastically reduced, humanoids will fill the gap? If so, will it fill it totally, partially? Your views on that, Balaji, if you can have you sharing your thoughts on this.
Thanks, Mr. Vijay. I'm so honored to be a part of this thing. And so regarding failures, so in my brief career, I've seen a few of those crises. So for instance, when I was entering college for studying computer science, the .com crash happened, and so many of my friends and relatives questioned my decision to take computer science instead of, like, say, electronics. And then the .com crash soon passed, and it became one of the biggest booming times for computing. Then in 2008 financial crisis, I was like At the time, I was trying to doing a career switch, and on that week when Lehman Brothers collapsed, I was in Wall Street interviewing for multiple subprime trading desks, and it was fascinating to watch all those things crashing. Fortunately for me, I had already shorted the market sufficiently, but I saw that so then they had to cancel the my planned career switch from technology to finance. And then I've been studying a lot on the past depression and recessions going back to 1800. And the biggest lesson I see is this too shall pass. Every crisis that seemed insurmountable, whether it is for technology, like all the major technology companies collapsing in 2000, or the biggest financial institutions shaking up in September 2008. All of these things people see as the end of the world. It is not. This too shall pass. So that's the first key lesson. And for us, in the immediate thing, in January 2020, we faced another crisis. This time from the COVID. So we were setting up our sales office in China. So China was we saw a huge market for expansion. In the last 3 years, we set up painstakingly all the network with the local governments, and we were part of the World Economic Forum there and so on. So we were setting up our office in Jiangsu. So I also traveled there in the middle of January to open the office. And then the COVID hit, and I had to postpone, and now it becomes indefinitely postponed. And so our one of the big forecasts that we had on the expansion, that we had to postpone or cancel at that time. Then the second thing happened with some of our suppliers, key suppliers were based in China, and when China markets closed up in the third week of January, then we had to rethink a whole bunch of things on supply chain, and then build up on the inventory and everything. Then the third thing hit us in February. So some of our biggest customers were in the hospitality, event management, and so on. And then so events started canceling from February, and we had to do a whole bunch of refunds as well as lost revenue in February. And then came in March, the lockdown and all those things happened. So it's a series of things, whether from our sales expansion globally, our existing sales here, our supply chain, our production, all of these were impacted in one go. But then we didn't want to survive on April 1st, I was looking at a prospect. I had 2 months of cash, and I had no option to just trying to go in a hibernation during crisis. The only way to do this thing was go on an attack, and attack we did. And the Q1 of this year, we had a 600% growth from Q1 of last year, and we not just survived through those 2 months, 2-3 months of lockdown, but we also raised a round of funding, and so on sales side, production side, and new market side, everything on Q1 became a best period of the year. So I would say the crisis is not just a cliched statement that that the crisis is an opportunity, but actually we can realistically use it. And in my brief experience with the previous crisis, the same thing happened. And so just coming to the second question on humanoids, the thing is we have a cheeky tagline that humanity is often gone in when it comes to service, many of the service roles. Our in the healthcare side, the nurses and doctors are no longer as nice, or the receptionists no longer as helpful as they were a couple of decades ago. So we have a cheeky tagline saying that we bring humanity back with robots. So the robots being able to understand, be patient, be able to answer, and then be very contextual. That is something that we see growing substantially over the next 5 years.
Right.
Over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Balaji. I hope you're able to bring back robots with emotions. Maybe you'll succeed and achieve that too. So that'll be a superhuman effort, but that's what we look forward to. Thank you very much. May I ask Sweta to, from the banking sector, investment banking. So from robotics, we go on to investment banking, which is a field of great interest to students too. And Sweta, you'll agree that we have seen that it's all driven by, finance is driven by sentiments. Sentiments are low. Banking is under pressure, but the smart ones are still continuing to do well. So Sweta, one lesson from failure, and what do you think about this present situation, and how do you see it affecting the investment banking sector? Yes, please.
Right. So I really connected with you, Vijay, when you started the session and you said failures are opportunities, because one quote that I had read long back, which had a lasting impression on me, was that failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is a part of success. So
Right.
somehow this quote stayed with me for a very long time. And then when I took on opportunities for growth, when I took on different kind of opportunities, I did not worry too much about the outcome, because either
Yeah.
way, if you were successful or so-called not so successful, you would definitely benefit by taking that opportunity, because you would have got some learnings and growth as a part of that opportunity. So Balaji did mention about the financial crisis and him being at Wall Street at that time. I also have a very interesting story. So I was changing jobs myself. I was
Yeah.
moving from Goldman Sachs, which was on the Wall Street, and I had visited Goldman just maybe a month. I visited the 88 Broad office a month before the financial crisis started, and then I had an offer from HSBC,
Yes.
where I wanted to do mega deals, and hence I decided to switch my sector to financial services sector. Little did I know that 1 month down the line, the entire sector will kind of collapse, and I will
Labs.
have no opportunity to work on any mega transaction, but only on distress sale. But I can tell you the 3 years of my career when I worked on financial services sector, although my initial expectation was to work on mega mergers and all, I worked on distress sale, group disposals, and fairness opinions and all of that, good bank, bad bank structure. So that was the richest time of my career thus far. And the amount of learning I've had during that time has been unparalleled. So definitely there is a lot of opportunity in investing yourself rightly during the time of crisis. Coming to the investment banking sector, I mean, during the start of the year, I think we were all cheering and gearing for growth. And if someone would have told me that this is the kind of situation that we are going to live in, I would have completely outcasted that person, saying what a joke. But we are truly living something which was so unprecedented, so like unbelievable, but today it is again so real and something that we are living day in day out. However, I mean, goes without saying that everyone is facing the brunt of it, and clients are seeing liquidity stresses, stretch balance sheet, and all of that. So that coupled with high fixed costs, muted growth, means that there is a lot of stress on cash positions for our clients, which is also impacting the way investment banks work and the way they make profits. So a lot of our lending portfolio is suffering big time. As you would have seen that there is a 50% rise in the non-performing assets and the
Yes.
loan loss reserves, which is eating into the profitability of investment banks and banks in general, right? And when there is a stress on profitability, there is a focus on cost. And then you are very blurred with what kind of investments you should be making, and which is very counterintuitive to the fact that we need to make a lot of investments because we need to change the way we are working, and we need to extend ourselves and invest a lot in technology. So those are a couple of challenges that banks are facing in general. And talking about investment banks, the M&A volumes are down as well, because obviously in the volatile environment, no one wants to close a transaction. So the volumes are down by about 47%, 68% in the US, 22% in EMEA, and 17% in Asia. So Asia has been a little more resilient of the lot.
Right.
So given these volumes decline, obviously the activity level have kind of declined. But I would like to again say that we should focus on opportunities, and irrespective of the fact that there has been all these challenges, there have been a lot of silver linings as well. For example, due to a lot of volatility, the securities in the markets division of investment banks have done really well. So they have made huge amount of profit because they've earned a lot of commission in trading in securities because the market has been great. And due to liquidity stresses, there has been a lot of demand on capital. So there has been a significant surge in capital market activities, which investment banks support as well. Specifically, the debt capital market has been really buoyant, and investment banks have made a lot of money in helping their clients raise debt from these markets and also access these COVID loans from different governments. So all in all, from the revenue side, we're impacted for sure, but there have been silver linings as well. But I would like to say that the opportunities have come in various other ways. For example, the technology, I mean, COVID situation has been an accelerator of societal and economic changes that were
Yeah.
anyways about to come and were very evident. I think it has just accelerated and brought it to fore, right? So that has really magnified and drawn a significant amount of attention on investment in digital and technology, which banks were kind of shying, and also investments and partnering with fintech companies, which was a bit down the line, but all this have been sort of magnified and brought to the fore. So this has been the focus these days. Besides, regulators have not been so anti financial institutions. So we have really done better after the last financial crisis, and we are ourselves more braced. But I think our regulators are also acting as a friends because they do not want to see a deluge of bankruptcies. So they are promoting friendly policies like do not pay out dividend, reinvest, and bulk up your capital. All in all, I would like to say that there has been a significant cultural shift in the banking industry. The human angle has been more important than ever. There has been a lot of discussions on well-being and human capital and how we kind of protect it. Also, the communication has become better, and there is a lot of transparency by corporates and organization, and in particular banks, how they sort of open up to their employees and make them a part of this whole thing. And people are working together much more jointly as a team, and there are Zoom calls where everyone dials in on video and they check in how you are. It's not like you check in how you are and proceed to business proceedings. You also wait to hear the answer, and you're really empathetic about the situation of the other person. So these are key changes which will be there to stay, and I think very positive changes.
That's very nice, Sweta, and it's very nice to hear. Thank you very much. That was quite insightful, I'm sure. Now, as Sweta said, this cultural shift and being more sensitive is such a great thing. I think that's a great learning. So we have become better human beings, I suppose. We have evolved in that sense that we are more sensitive to others, we are more understanding, and I think both in the personal front and professional, it's only make us better. And these challenges, we should look at it in a manner that will help us evolve and become stronger. And as she rightly said, that's great learning. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sweta. Vishwas, if I can come on to you now. Vishwas, as you know, is in consulting, and I'm sure his experience will be valuable for us to understand. One, of course, the success failure thing, which we've all discussed. And regarding your sector, since you're in the field of supply chain, and the supply chain is a very important thing because it all matters as to when you get what you want at the right time. But the environment being volatile, the environment being unpredictable, the environment being uncertain, how do you manage this cascading effect of this uncertainty in the context of, and how do you safeguard the supply chain network is my point to you, or the question to you, besides the challenge or failure that you would like to share with us. Thank you, Vishwas. Over to you. I think you're on mute. Yeah.
Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so thanks, Vijay.
Yeah.
I think COVID is a good context for us to talk about. And partly that is so because a lot of disruption has happened and people are reflecting on what could I have done better or what could we have done better.
Yeah.
I think one learning that I would, and there's a lot of disruption that has happened at personal level, happened at organizational levels. I think one insight that I would point to over here is that both the statements are true. COVID has changed a lot of things and COVID has not changed much. And let me explain. See, the companies that were strong and doing well before COVID are also doing relatively better after COVID. In general, across the industries, what you will see is that the well-managed firms are doing better now, just as they were doing well before COVID. And I think that is an important insight, because there is a lot of soul searching and thinking that we do when we think about, oh, I should have foreseen this. If I had done this, if I had done that, I could have probably done better now. But the simple truths of managing better, operating better, and planning better, strong us in good stead earlier, and they do well for us now as well. So I would draw on that insight, and using that, I would also talk about supply chain, because supply chain is actually managing a complex system. And if you try to do raise your performance in one direction, you will end up compromising in performance in the other areas. So there are trade-offs that are involved. And like in the insight that I was pointing out about general business, the same thing applies for supply chain. If we can keep our cost structures low, if we can make sure that we maintain a strong cash flow, and very selectively have risk management, not across the board risk management, because if you try to do too many things, then you will not be able to survive. You try and just focus on risk management and reduction of risk, your costs will go up very high. So in what I'm seeing across clients is these things: keep cost structures low, keep your cash flow strong, and very selectively manage risk to just manage those bottlenecks where you need to maybe diversify your supply a little bit. That, I think, has been a pretty strong predictor of how things will work out for a manufacturing or supply chain firm in the present environment and before.
Yeah, Vishwas. So you see that once you do this, if I may get you right, one can better address the uncertain cascading effect of the environment on the supply chain system. So you got to be prepared and be ready before it attacks you. So you're able to respond to it rather than react to the challenge, right?
That is right. And like I was saying, the thing is that it's very difficult to predict black swan events like COVID. And we keep wringing our hands and thinking, we should have foreseen this. But the fact is that you cannot foresee the next black swan event, and it will be completely random. You'll only keep preparing for the previous black swan event that has happened in the past.
Right. Yes.
So focusing on the fundamentals and keeping the business aspect strong has normally served well, I think, companies pretty much across industries.
That's true. Thank you very much. Thank you for that insight. And so we've got definitely a varied inputs, and let's continue with that. Let me now go to the area of startups. And I'm sure many students are interested in startups. They want to be entrepreneurs. It's very good, exciting, but it's also challenging. But then what can we learn? So Devbrat Mishra has worked quite a bit, and I think he's taken classes also for some of the second year students, Dev, and he's a leadership and startup advisor. So Devbrat, if you can tell us some lesson from one failure, because startups are, as you know, vulnerable. There are hardly 1% of startups which ultimately take on, is what statistics say. So if you can talk about one of the challenges of failures, and also more importantly, the second part, in this current context, startups have gone under liquidation, quite a few of them, because they don't have the luxury of a huge reserve. They don't have the luxury of a backup and cash on hand. So what is your view on this, and how should startups address this challenge? So that's the second part, and the first part is the management of a failure and the lesson that you've learned. Over to you, Dev.
Okay. Thanks, Dr. Vijay.
Yeah.
So, in my dictionary, I don't think I believe in either success or failure. And I'll just elaborate on that, given that it's a strategy summit. See, success is very individual. So our definitions of success are very individual, and it really doesn't hold. You can't define success as a very broad brush across. And if you, having been a management consulting professional working with clients on innovation and strategy, I have this favorite definition of what strategy is. So my favorite definition of strategy is operating within constraints. So the choices we make operating within constraints is strategy. And breaking constraints is innovation. And when I look at the world of business, one of the saddest things that I see in most organizations is that they define meeting a plan as success and not meeting a plan as failure. And let's say that we take that into our lives as well. See, any plan, any strategy or any business plan or any plan that we put in place is built on hypothesis. And therefore we move through life, we move through annual calendars, testing those hypotheses. So if there is a target, it is always a hypothesis that this is a boundary condition. We would fall short or we would go beyond that. And failure is when we don't learn anything. That is the true definition of failure. So if I were to look at strategy, there are only two things which happens in strategy. So either you're testing hypothesis or you're indulging in insanity, because insanity is about doing the same things over and over again and expecting different outcomes. So if you're not learning from your execution, then you're absolutely insane. You keep on doing the same thing. So there is no failure. If you learn something from not meeting a target or a number or not achieving what you set out to, you cannot define it as failure, because that learning you carry forward. Let me come to the world of startups. And the reason why I left the consulting profession and became a startup entrepreneur. And the story is, in 2010, I was the managing director of Hewitt for Middle East and North Africa. And I quit my job and I didn't take a flight for 9 months. I used to be based in Dubai. So for 9 months, I didn't travel anywhere. And I quit my job on the peak of the financial crisis, because I was trying to test my resilience of saying that if something like this happened again, would I be able to cope up with it? So come the COVID crisis, this world of no travel is nothing new. I've already done it, practiced it. Being without employment or without a regular job, I've already done and tested it out for 1.5 years. And the fact that, I would disagree with the viewpoint that COVID is a black swan event. So I was recently talking to Nassim Taleb, the author of Black Swan, and he was very clear that COVID is not a black swan event, because black swan is that if you haven't ever seen a crisis of similar nature. So zero travel, it has happened when the Iceland volcano erupted. Europe and most parts of the world shut down air travel. So people were grounded wherever they were. The SARS virus has had multiplier impact, and we have dealt with it earlier. So most of us in the business world and in our personal lives are familiar with this uncertainty or volatility in different forms. So it is nothing new. We have been living in the VUCA world for many years now. In the world of startups, the only startups who suffer as a result of these kind of crises are the ones who have plans built on unlimited access to capital. So they believe that venture capital will come their way and they will be able to burn the cash and grow that customer base or the top line at the expense of the investors' cash which is being put in place. But if you were to do a minimum viable organization, you don't burn cash to grow. You actually look at unit profitability right from day one. And that is where I would like to, I'm a big fan of the artisanal economy. And in the years between 1600 and 1700, India used to contribute close to 25% of the world GDP. And in that era, there were no multinational corporations or large organizations. We were an artisanal economy. We are an artisanal culture. So, the size, how big you are never really mattered. You used to have apprentice, you would teach them the craft, you would run a business which was good enough for you and your family. And if you had land or if you had a kingdom, then you were wealthier than the others. But most of the people lived and contributed to the economy in a very stable manner. I see this learning from the COVID crisis as shifting us into small is beautiful, into looking at artisanal, what I can control. And it's a lesson that we also need to carry into our lives as students who probably have taken educational loans, who are building a career. What happens if 2 years down the line the COVID crisis continues? What if employment doesn't come your way? You need to start building at a future that if you don't get a job, what is the option that is open to you? And that's what I call as strategy, building scenarios and being prepared for those scenarios. Learning from the fact that, how do if I don't have a job, if I don't have revenues, what is the bare minimum cost structure that I can operate with? And I was recently having a conversation with some of the startup founders. And I said that, if you have expenses of meeting your requirements, this COVID crisis has told you that you can work from anywhere. So move to lower cost locations, shift away from expensive real estate, go to smaller locations. Sridhar Vembu is a great example. So Zoho runs out of a village. And he's been extremely successful. We should listen to what he has to say. And in the startup world, this whole notion of unlimited access to capital and trying to be a unicorn is the reason why most startups fail. Because valuation is a binary game. You might have high valuation, you might have zero valuation. I have been a startup founder. So when I quit my job in 2010, I ran an accelerated life cycle of a startup. So from startup to shutdown in a very accelerated fashion. In 2 years, we burned close to 10 crores. And I lost all my life savings and, shutting down those startups. And there was a lesson in it that, when you plan as if the future is going to play out in only one scenario, that the startup will succeed, you will have access to capital, your failure, when it doesn't happen, it really shatters you. So planning for scenarios is an extremely important thing. And the last piece that I would say around the startup piece is that if you have an idea, never fall in love with it. So never fall in love with your plan. So whether it's an idea, product or service, or even your career, never fall in love with it. Because the setbacks, you tend to get blindsided to the setbacks that happen. And that's where I believe that the VUCA world has prepared us for these kind of setbacks. We haven't paid attention to it. We haven't noticed it, but it has happened all around us. The economic crisis, the financial crisis was there. The dot-com bust has happened. The SARS virus was there. The Icelandic volcano shutdown had happened. There were terror attacks in the country. We have experienced it in many, many times over, but we didn't learn a lesson. Most of us didn't. But now is the time when it has been so long that we should be picking up leaves from this experience and planning a future for the scenarios which are likely to play out, which could be that, you don't get to travel for the next 2 years. That's a reality. What's the world going to look like for that? And starting up is not an expensive proposition. So if you, currently I'm running 2 startups with my daughter who finished her master's, and, I had always wanted her not to take up a job and be an entrepreneur. So she's my co-founder in 2 startups, and we run it as a minimum viable organization, 0 employees, but with collaboration. So we are spreading the risk across the ecosystem. So maybe our margins will be lesser because we are collaborating with other startups and other organizations, but we'll be much more stable. If we fail, then the failure will be collective. If we succeed, the success will be collective. And that's where, the lesson of having done it earlier, of having, shut down a startup after a significant expense, is the one that I'm carrying forward. And I would suggest that as students of management, you think about your future, the business, and maybe just think about saying that, if I were to run my own enterprise, how would I do it? How would you do it in a frugal manner? So these would be my thoughts for the startup world and for failures as well.
Thank you very much, Devbrat. I think students, one of the things you would have gathered from Devbrat thing is he was following his heart. And I think he was following his passion. And he believed in certain things, but at the same time, what he focused on, be realistic, don't be a unicorn and expect things to go the way you want, and don't fall in love with your idea. Now, these are important things because there's a tendency for us to get overwhelmed with things which we love to do and expect it to happen that way, but life is not like that. But if you follow your heart and be realistic and be passionate and do the right thing, ultimately you will do well. Thank you very much. May I now go to the pharmaceutical sector? My friend Ashutosh is here, and Ashutosh has had a varied experience. And in the pharmaceutical sector today, it's all the more important given the COVID times. There's a huge demand for pharmaceutical products, services, and there's an opportunity. So, Ashutosh, if you can share with us one of the lessons that you've learned through a challenge or a failure, plus the role of digitization and technology, like in everything else, has become very important now. And relating to the pharmaceutical sector, how do you see it playing out? Over to you, Ashutosh.
Thanks, Dr. Yacheshwar. One thing which I want to really share that till now it's been a pleasure to hear all the speakers because getting a lot of insights from them. That's great. Talking about success and failure, I guess I can completely relate to Shweta as well as Balaji. Probably one of my biggest challenge in life was the 2008 meltdown because I'm a 2009 batch. I am Indore pass out, which has been probably the lowest point any IIM has seen in the history. So in 2009, when I passed out, obviously September 2008, Lehman debacle had happened. No jobs. Then Satyam debacle happened. No jobs. And you imagine that when you're joining an IIM, you have certain expectations that, okay, at least you'll get a job. Leave aside the package, leave aside the role, leave aside the responsibilities. And all of a sudden, everything vanishes in front of you and you have no clue whatsoever what to do. You have taken loan. And there are so many things like you're seeing probably your dreams vanish in front of you. So what do you do? So either one, you can just take the defeat and probably accept it as a failure and just move on, or probably you challenge yourself saying that this is not the worst is yet to come, and just move on. So this is where in 2009 when I wanted to join finance sector, that's where I can relate with Shweta. I actually joined MBA school because I was completely interested in finance and that was my dream, finance and economics. Unfortunately, all these things happened. There are no jobs. Like just to give you an idea, my senior batch, which was having around 80 to 90 people who got placed in banks and international banks, it came down to 15 for me. So from 90 to 15, and that also half of them had pre-placement offers. No jobs in the campus. What do you do? And finance in particular, which was probably a passion, no jobs. So you had a choice. Either you probably take up something and then move on to finance 2 or 3 years down the line when things pick up, or probably take this as a challenge and decide what you can do in life, which is more than finance. And that's where I took up a small role, which was kind of an EA, which was more of shadowing your CEO and managing director and probably learning the business, what I can say, business, how to run a business from here. So when I joined, I realized one thing, probably no role or no job or no profile or no function is small or big or important or not important. It's all about how you probably play the game and how you probably develop yourself in that particular profile. And from that day, I've never looked back. I've probably got dream offers from my dream companies after that, but I've never probably taken it up because I felt strategy is my thing now. And for last 11 to 12 years, I've been in strategy. And it all started with a small job and probably an insight from my CEO and MD then. He said that, Ashutosh, I also started it small. Okay. Never feel smaller that, okay, despite passing out of IIM, you've joined a small organization because people will respect for you and not the company that you're working for. People will respect for what you bring on table and not which company you come from. So just build on yourself. And that's where over the period of last 11 to 12 years, what I've learned and what I call something called 4D framework, which is probably helped me in my life. The first was probably deliver more than what is expected, and that's what has helped and worked for me. So if your boss or if your senior or if your superior asks you to work on something, do that something and do much more than that. That probably proves that you are a responsible person and you are ready to take on more responsibilities. That has worked in for me for all this what I've done. Second was have a disciplined approach. Whether it's your projects, initiatives, communication, working with the senior leadership, honor your commitments, whether it's time, quality, whatever it is, you have to have a disciplined approach. The fourth thing which has worked for me is demonstrate. Because over a period of time, see, when you join at a small level, obviously it takes time to probably achieve the leadership position. And today, when you lead a function for a big organization, people look up to you. And I guess that's where not just leading, but leading from the front is more important. And that's where you have a very strong team which helps you build, because see, you cannot do everything on yourself. You need a very strong team to probably support you on every facet and aspect of the business. And the fourth and the most important thing which I learned from my current boss is decision making. I guess that completely is the game changer, because I've seen so many leaders, they take decisions, but and that's what probably decides whether they are good at it or bad at it. These 4 Ds probably helped me overcome the challenges. I wouldn't say it was a failure, because see, it's how you perceive whether it's failure, whether it's low of your life, or whether it's a challenge. I guess what matters to you is belief in yourself. At the end of the day, like I, I hear a lot of people saying COVID, Corona, what all things it's doing. But I guess what's important is not focusing on these external parameters, like what insights have been given by Debabrata also, that these things have happened in past. That's fine, right? Let's not focus on it. Let's focus on ourselves. Let's focus on how we can probably bring value onto the table and probably develop those skills and capabilities. Because tomorrow, if I am the front runner on every aspect that a company needs, no matter whether it's the downturn, whether it's the upturn of the economy, you will be the one who would probably be leading the business or leading the organization. It's all upon you. So that's what I would like to say about what my life has been. Unfortunately, again, it hangs around 2008 or 2009 meltdown. But since then, I've never looked back, and I love my profile. So probably what Devabrat also mentioned, today I don't think when I go to office, I go to office. No, I love my profile. I love my job. And that's the reason why I keep on doing a lot of innovative things in a pharma sector. So now coming to the second thing which you asked me. See, pharma has been probably the laggards when it comes to innovation on the sales and marketing front. Obviously, probably on the product innovation, we have the highest R&D spends. But when it comes to anything other than that, anything other than product, whether it's your function, process, sales and marketing, digital adoption, anything, pharma has been the laggards across. And Indian pharma in particular has been the worst in it. When I joined the organization, we did not have anything which is digital or anything which is innovation. So it was a tough job when you join as head of strategy, that probably the kind of digital adoption, digital knowledge, digital acumen within the company has not been that great. But today, when I stand after 5 years, probably we are one of the best performing organizations when it comes to digital and innovation. And that has not been like because of my team, which is driven, probably because of the culture that we have created, that digital is not a kind of an allied business. It's something which is an integral heart of how you do your business. Unfortunate part for us in this industry is we have a lot of regulations when it comes to digital and innovation. So we have to operate within a lot of boundaries. Like I cannot show my brand to public. I can only show it in a closed chamber to a doctor. So my avenues for branding are already limited to the 8 lakh doctors, and that also probably in the chamber. So operating in that regulatory aspect and trying to do digital and innovation, one, it's challenging and exciting because you are doing something which is not done or which is not prevalent in the industry. So it's always exciting to work on this. Like we are probably the only organization in the world which has a multilingual health chatbot, which was also mentioned by Forbes.com. It's called Anya. It's the only AI powered chatbot which can answer any question on diabetes, tuberculosis, respiratory ailments, hypertension. and it has been performing superbly well. Like till now, almost 3 lakh patients have interacted with it. So what you have to do is, see, you have to identify. So we did not start this particular thing as, okay, let's build a chatbot. No, we started with the pain point. So what was the pain point? There was a 2017 study which said that the doctors in India can spend at best 2 to 3 minutes with a patient on an average. Now, in 2 to 3 minutes, are you expecting the doctor to diagnose, basically prescribe, plus answer all his queries? It's not possible. And secondly, even when you are as a patient go to a doctor, half of the things you forget. When you come out, you are like, oh shit, I forgot to ask him. So what we saw was there is an opportunity of resolving this simple queries where medication is not involved, drugs are not involved, prescription is not involved. And so rather than looking as if we are creating another medical chatbot which may replace the doctor like the humanoid or something of that sort, we said we'll partner with doctors. We said that doctors, this is something for your benefit so that your patients simple queries are answered and you can focus on more patients rather than focusing on their simple queries. Like simple, a patient may have a question that I am administering insulin because I have diabetes, and if I'm traveling, how do I carry my insulin pen because it needs to be maintained at X temperature? Simple question, but doctor is not going to keep on explaining every patient, right? So this is something which I guess was missing in pharma, about identifying the pain point. No matter how many regulations you have, how many small initiatives you can do, that's what we looked at, and probably we have been, may not be the leaders when it comes to it because we are still learning phase, but we have decently achieved where we are today. When the COVID pandemic started, we were probably having enough digital platforms to interact with doctors, right from remote detailing, wherein MR can talk to a doctor through a video call. See, it might sound very niche for a lot of sectors because this is something which is uh, fairly common in a lot of sectors. But trust me, the digital adoption in the pharma sector, specifically from the doctor side, has been very low. Doctors are not comfortable at all with a video call or a digital interaction or an e-consultation platform. So one thing was to probably change their attitude towards digital. And for that, what we did was we onboarded digital experts who could teach doctor how they can actually get benefit from a digital platform. So rather than I pushing to a doctor, we made him believe that this is beneficial to you and we are not being pushy. And that's where what we saw was the adoption of whatever digital strategies we were doing was adopted by the doctor because he saw benefit in it. He saw that, okay, today if I attend a webinar, it's important. Today, how I can probably reach out to the patient in lockdown. Okay, I have these platforms, how I can do it. How to have an e-prescription or an EMR done, which will probably not just help me in COVID times, but otherwise maintain patient database and everything. So what we did was we made doctor believe that this is not for our benefit, it's for your benefit. And we are just being a channel, or we are just being what I can say, a catalyst in this entire journey. And that's where probably we have been doing good. And probably I believe that we have lot of ambitious plans through which we will be connecting, because see, for me, my customer is doctor, it's not the patient, because unless and until a doctor prescribes a medicine, the patient is not going to take the medicine. So that's how it has been, Dr. Vijay.
Yeah. Thank you, Ashutosh. I was briefly reminded of Warren Buffett saying, when Ashutosh said that he loves doing this job, he says, if you love the job that you do, you will feel like dancing down the way to your office rather than saying, oh God, I've got to office. So I think it's a key thing. You got to passionately love your job, and then it's really fun doing what you do. And the other important point that he mentioned, yes, creativity. When you love your job, you think outside the box. This multilingual thing is a great thing, because then you relate to the human aspect of technology and make it easier for patients to understand and relate to what they need, and they're more comfortable, because after all, they're all psychological beings. Human beings are psychological, and they need to feel comfortable with the doctor. So a doctor has to be 50% a psychologist, not just a prescription technologist. So thank you, Ashutosh. Now we have an interesting variety in our panelists in terms of an Ajay Chaturvedi, Now, heads this Harbour, which is doing a great job, NGO, and I think it's very important when we talk about the bottom of the pyramid, the marginalized sections of society, more so when there is lack of trust among industry by the general public. The general public seems to think that industry is all for making money, but it's not really so. Many good companies are doing great work. And Ajay Chaturvedi, I'd like you to talk about this one point of a challenge or a failure. I'd like to talk how you address this. And the second thing is the current context, the rural. There's a lot of migration of labor, and that's a big challenge. I mean, they're psychologically very, very badly hit. They don't know what to do. They've gone back. So how do you address this? Because it's a segment that we need to be sensitive to. Over to you, Ajay.
Sure. Thank you so much. So first of all, I think, it's great to be here, and, it's lovely listening to my fellow panelists. And I think a lot has been already said. So, I wouldn't be able to say much more about failure. I do remember the dot-com bust, because I was in the US at that time, and I was coming out of business school around 2002. So I sort of witnessed the whole dot-com bust. And, for us, also, I ended up making a lot of money during those day trading days, right? Because any company that has a .com, and you could just trade it. And of course, this is the time that you thought that you had the market figured, but clearly nobody has the market figured, right? And this is while sitting in Wharton, one of the classes, and we saw the market completely melting. Now, to us, it might have come across, and definitely, I was completely shattered because I'd lost a lot of money. I mean, I know couple of my friends who lost around $400-500 million at that time, right? So the guys were in therapy. I did not lose as much. I did, but it was still, a lot for me, for a student who had invested and made. The thing is, .com was made of companies largely, which were not making revenues. Profits was a far cry. I mean, things like Napster, literally started trading during the .com days, right? So I think the fundamentals were always in question, but people were following a wave. Now that same thing happened in 2008 financial crisis. If you were inside the bank and you said that you couldn't see it, I think you're just fooling the public. But 2008 crisis was as much of a doing of excessive risk taking, which I normally quote it this way, that you can price risk, or you can put risk on a beggar. But if the beggar is not never going to make any money, no matter how good your Excel spreadsheet looks, the money is never coming back. So from that perspective, I think, the first decade of my career really helped me understand a lot of these intricacies and finer aspects of the career, that technically there is no failure ever, or a success for that matter. There is only a meeting of your expectations versus what your goals. So if both meet, you find yourself successful. If they don't, you're not. The two options, this again, very broadly putting, is that either it's personal or it's systemic. When it's personal, you've basically not met up to the expectations of the system. If it's systemic, then the system is actually behind you. And I found that as well, working for the most part in a lot of things that I've undertaken. So if you're ahead of the system, basically an idea whose time has not come is definitely not going to succeed. That is not a personal failure for your own self. So that's something that I definitely urge people to keep in mind. Never ever take any of these failures personally, especially at a time like this. When I see a lot of people talking about depression, and people are going into depression and they're talking about taking drugs. I mean, I would any day stay away from any of that, right? So a failure has to be looked at in a holistic manner, and the more objectively you start looking at it, the better it starts to get. So I've faced several failures. So .com bust was the first one. 2008 financial crisis was the second one. I was still with Citi in investment banking, and I saw that, right? So I'm not going to go into the details of the 2008 one, but what I started to witness there was that it was really a fundamental disconnect from the narrative that you were running in. And it's unfortunate, we're having this discussion in Delhi, in India. Most of the people, I think, are from North India, but we're speaking in a language which is not Indian. I'm not against English. I'm not against, pro any language, but I'm just saying we need to kind of just keep this fact in mind, and I'll talk about the rest of the things. The more I traveled, so I lived in the US at that time, around 2008. 7, 8 is when I, sort of started to return periodically. And I saw the understanding that we had of India from the sources, the common sources, was fundamentally different from what was really on the ground, right? And I'm not going to go into the details of everything, but let me quickly throw a few numbers, right? The total percentage of English-speaking population, the people who can communicate in English today. By the way, we're talking about India, we're talking about the Indian economy. IMI is International Management Institute, but let me just talk broadly about the numbers. After 250 years of colonization of the British and 70 years of education, because of which all of us are speaking in English, the total percentage of people that communicate in English is less than 5%. Okay, I'm a banker, so I'm going to talk only numbers. Every time I talk to people, I say, guys, I'll give you a mathematical proof for everything. You have a theory, you have a suggestion, please come to me, let's talk numbers. Because if you don't have numbers, there's no point. I mean, it's a pie in this kind of an argument, and I'm not going to make any big deal about it. So that's number one. Number two, KFC came with the same thing, right? Kentucky Fried Chicken has chicken in its name. They came here, they spent 10 years, first 10 years trying to educate the market. They, completely failed. Finally, what did they launch? A vegetarian burger. A Kentucky Fried Chicken launched. McDonald's sells a vegetarian burger only in India. It's called Maharaja Burger. I'm not preaching vegetarianism or non-vegetarian. I'm just saying that, look, if you don't know the market, you can spend all your life, fancy modeling on an Excel spreadsheet, but life is not Excel spreadsheet. It's really happening on the ground. That's really what made me, take a plunge into rural, or real India, as I call it now. And I started to explore what was really, going on over there. Are people really the way, the market is saying? Is this what is really happening? Let's say, for example, people are talking about farmer suicides. Till 3-4 years ago, this was like a regular feature. So I started to explore it. I mean, India is an agrarian economy, and we have an agricultural problem. I mean, are you kidding me? We are 130 crore or 1.3 billion people. The last problem we should have is of economy. You know why? Because if you're talking purely livelihoods, unless you're talking aspirational jobs, livelihood can be made, right? It just depends on you identifying the supply chain of producers and consumers, and period. You plug yourself in, it makes sense. Now, India's agrarian crisis is actually surprisingly not an agricultural crisis. It's a supply chain crisis, right? From that perspective, I really started to get a much better understanding of what was really going on in, real India. So I've talked about the language, I've talked about the food, I've talked about, how people are really feeling. Now, when I moved here, the way we launched the first all-women rural BPO was not with the intention of, first of all, launching a BPO. Definitely not an all-women, and definitely not only in a Jat village with Khap Panchayats, especially, with a movie like NH10 that sort of came out around that time, which completely demonized, Jat villages, Haryana. People would say, oh my God, I can't go out, right? This is not the Wild West. I've personally been there, I go there regularly, so I know for a fact. That was not something that, was understood well. So I thought, let me explore this. And I've shared this example many times before, but, I'll quickly mention this. What really triggered, and, my eureka moment in rural India was when a 35-year-old woman who had studied till 8th grade could memorize the keyboard in 3 hours straight, okay? Now, her curiosity question was, and I'm a computer science engineer, right? From a premier institute, from BITS. She asked me a basic question. She said, I've studied till 8th. we were taught ABCD, but on this thing that you have in front of you, why does it say QWERTY? And I was stumped, right? So my curiosity really picked up from there. Look, it is really about people. I mean, Kentucky Fried Chicken, all educated guys, I'm pretty sure Harvard, Wharton, wherever, they came here, they banged their head for 10 years, finally, selling vegetarian burger. Why couldn't you have picked it up before, right? And here's a woman who's never seen a computer in her life, studied till 8th grade, could memorize the keyboard like that, right? So that video is, you can Google it, it's there on the net. That's what made us launch a rural BPO, and that became a world record, and, things started to happen. Now, fortunately, because of that, and by the way, we're not in the NGO sector pure play, it's like a mix because it has to be, right? That's what I think a lot of people are completely missing the point. They think that NGO is the only way to go. I don't think so. You've got to have a mix of NGO plus a for-profit, because unless it's a mixed model, it does not work. It does not fly at all. Because I love Margaret Thatcher's saying for this one, right? You can keep spending other people's money until you run out of it. And then, so I think that's one of the key things that we need to keep in mind, right? So for us, and if you look at the Harvard website, I specifically had said it's a socio-capitalistic organization, right? So what's a socio-capitalistic organization? You bring people to a certain benchmark and then let people rise from there. You don't say, well, we'll make everything equal, because I think in my mind, that's the stupidest thing to do. We let people grow, right? If you're not there, then, help them get to a certain point. So for us, for example, the very first step was to make them understand what a keyboard was. It doesn't matter if it's an Apple or a Windows computer. All they really needed to do was work in computers. So for me, that was a phenomenal learning, right? Now, I hit the first failure because Airtel, the first, the largest telecom company in India and, one of the world's largest companies, reported its first loss in 15 years of the existence. You got to understand that, that's not the loss that they're recovering from the consumer. That's the loss they're recovering from the vendors, right? So the contracts, the way they are structured is like, this is the change we'll make, and boom, 20% of revenue is gone. And you're thinking, well, what can I do? You can't fight an Airtel, right? They've got like this battery of lawyers who'll come and, just completely zero down on the contract. This is what it is. This is what you signed. What I started to understand was, look, technology is a means to an end. It is not the end in itself. What I'm trying to do, because of my, upbringing, education, having lived abroad across the world, is that technology is the only thing we need to educate these people on. And we're literally, I'll use a Hindi saying, "Aap gadhe ko ghoda banane ki koshish kar rahe ho, ghode ko gadha banane," right? You got to sell them the way they are. Not, if you keep upskilling them, there's a point beyond which they lose their identity, right? Same exact thing that I talked about. A McDonald's sells a burger that's fantastic. I go to McDonald's whenever I don't anymore, is for fries. So if McDonald's, the moment they change their fries, I'd probably just lose all the interest, right? I don't go for the toys or whatever. So everyone has their own specific things, and that's where it comes to India. When I talked about this is something phenomenal that I learned, that these people are phenomenally talented. They are very smart, right? Some of the most high IQ people I've come across in rural India, right? And this is a part of my life, where I spent time in the Himalayas. So I spent time, found my guru, spent time in caves, meditating. That gave me a huge perspective, because when you're 1/7 of the world population and you're not really governing or even a part of the narrative, there's a huge problem, right? When people talk about India, everyone is talking about, the streets, slums, beggars, poverty. There are a lot of other things, right? And that by the way, I learned, after I traveled across. So after I learned this philosophy, every time I'd go and, talk about social capitalism and producers and consumers, a lot of people miss the point, which is when I ended up writing this book, Lost Wisdom of the Swastika. So in this book, I've actually predicted Brexit, right? In so many words. Brexit, not like Brexit will happen, but, essentially Europe's downfall, right? And there was a point 2 years ago that I actually spoke at British Parliament on this, because these guys totally got it. They're like, you're absolutely bang on. How are you talking about this? See, I'm not this Nostradamus type guy, right? I'm talking about mathematical models. I'm talking about something as simple as, look, I understand, I'm predicting to you that you live in Delhi, yes, and you live in a house, yes. In April 2025, you'll have mangoes in your trees. It's like that, right? I mean, it does not take Einstein, right? April mangoes come, I'm just saying 2025, could be 2030, right? So it's stuff like that. So I ended up writing this book on philosophy to help people understand, look, you've got to, at some point, you've got to unplug and then take cognizance of this situation as is on the ground, not just take mathematical models, from, let's say, Harvard. I mean, when Harvard is talking about, or UNSC does a study on, India's poverty rate, they're talking about a person not being able to eat 2 square meals. 1 square meal for them is a burger. I'm sitting in Gurgaon, the Millennium City of India. Outside on the main road, there's a guy sitting in under a tapri, and he's eating sattu ki aate ki roti and namak ka pani, right? Now that's like one fraction of the cost that a burger would cost. So the point is, we need to take cognizance of the situation as is on the ground. Unless we do that, that's where we're completely failing. So if your metrics are not right, data is not right, our decision making is not right. So that's as far as the failures in my own life. Now, coming to, you asked about a couple of things. something that we're actively working on now, especially with regards to Harvard. We are building more of a relationship-driven economy, and I can't disclose too much on it, but there's something called Kautilya Fellowship, which is a part of Harvard. So we're connecting a lot of the urban youth to understand the narratives around here, and that's more to do with the skills, the products, the productivity, and the producers that are in these real India places, which can be now connected, right? So the outcome of COVID, by the way, COVID was completely known to a lot of people, not the format itself, how it will break out, but it was known that an epidemic of this sort will break out. I mean, Bill Gates has said it. A lot of people had anyway talked about it. My book talks about it in a very philosophical manner, so I'm not going to go deep into that, but we sort of expected this, right? Because there's a point beyond which the economy has to break. So we've literally gone into distributed economic systems now, right? For lack of a better word. Secondly, what's happened after COVID is not that, oh my God, economy has gone down. No, guys, economy actually is still the same. Primary supply chains are disrupted. Primary supply, that's a big loss, right? Number two, consumers have reduced, so people are consuming less. So there's less production being made. Technically, less people in the class, less water in the well. It's as simple as that, right? So are the GDP numbers doing well? Of course not. If you're producing less, people are consuming less, the GDP is not growing. This is where it's an analysis paralysis. So I'm not saying that it's something really good or something bad, but let's get a situation on the ground as is. From my perspective, the people who have migrated back actually have migrated back from less opportunity to a more opportunity area. They came to Delhi or to Mumbai when the people were actually hiring cars and laborers and whatnot. Now they've gone back to a place. So look, it's not like they were starving there. And the people who are starving, of course, there's an opportunity, and I'll talk about that. But the people who came here were literally, let's say making 20 rupees a day, came to Mumbai and they were making 100 rupees a day. Now, when it reduced to making 10 rupees a day back in Mumbai, they've gone back to the village because, eventually the need of labor is still there as well. So is it good for them or bad for them? Right now, I've kept the juries out. I'm not saying anything until I see the actual numbers. I've not been able to travel out, by air. So I've traveled wherever close I've been to driving. It makes perfect sense. In fact, we drove out to a village about 50 kilometers from where I live in Gurgaon. And honestly, we could not sense COVID situation there. There was nobody with a mask. There was no panic. People, no social distancing. It was like life is normal, right? I clicked a few pictures. Maybe I'll share them later as well. So from my perspective, I think labor class has an opportunity, which is where we are trying to plug in. We're trying to plug in to whatever they were producing before, help them produce it better, help them productize it better, help them manage quality better, and help them channel market it better. So if globalization meant that I could buy a Gucci bag in Milan, Italy, I could buy it in New York City, I could buy it in London, I could buy it in Delhi. But I cannot buy a hookah made in Haryana or a charpai made in Haryana, even in Gurgaon. So forget globalization, right? So for me, it was a two-way street. That's where we're trying to plug in the opportunity with the fellowship that we've got. Number two, the agri sector. I think this is probably the biggest opportunity we've got in a century, okay, maybe even more. This is where we need to really step in. People who are educated, people who are well connected across the world. This is the time to plug in the supply chain gaps. If you cannot do it, trust me, you missed the boat. We're trying to do that aggressively. And we can, I don't want to take too much time on this one. The third, the three core areas that we're working on. One, we've actively learned from Harvard that only skilling people on digital computers, digital skills is not enough. Number two, instead of the digital skills, we're actually now actively focusing on productization, product marketing, branding, all kinds of things, right? Because that is where one of the biggest opportunity. A Starbucks can make a haldi doodh to turmeric latte. Why the hell has none of us been able to do it? I mean, I keep asking this question. I've asked this at times. I've asked this myself 100 times. Like, why have I not done it? That's partly something that we're missing. Number two, what we're doing is actively reaching out to the youth, especially anybody who comes to me that there's a lack of jobs. I think, guys, there's a massive opportunity on livelihood creation, and it does not take as much of financing. But this is where it opens up. So the gap needs to be plugged in. I'm not saying that the finances are abundantly available. we need a Peter Thiel for India. We need a Peter Thiel who, invested $500 million on a hunch in Facebook. We don't have that, and we're trying to, find those. Number three, which is the most critical one, is that we're trying to drive and revive the relationship models in India, because I think a lot of people have lost the that sort of ownership, that sense of pride in what they were doing. Recently, I was exploring something, and I came across this video of a temple, the Kailasha temple. I'm pretty sure all of you have seen it as well. What intrigued me was that Kailasha temple, which is around Ellora caves, was built. One, they can't really carbon date it, so they have like an approximate that it was built around like 1, 2, 3 century AD. Okay, fantastic. They can't really make out what material it is made of. Okay, so that's number two. Number three, they're like, we think it was made over a period of 5 years, but there's a possibility because, by the popular myth, that it was made in a week. Like, fantastic. So it was made in a week from a single stone, and it was made for like this material. Aurangzeb sent 1,000 people, that's recorded. For 3 years, they could not deface the temple, let alone destroy it. Now, that's the heritage that we have. So if we can't pick up all of it, we can pick up some of it and start creating. So my last words is really, guys, I think this is a massive opportunity time. Are the times great in terms of, can we like just go out and, drive around anywhere? No, I don't think so. But then this, I've used it phenomenally well. I mean, I've been doing, fitness regimes, yoga, all kinds of things. So I think time is good. Let's gear up and let's make India great.
Yeah. Great place. Thank you, Ajay, for that very insightful and detailed account of how one needs to respect the rural market. I think one key point which came out was, please don't underestimate the wealth of wisdom that exists in the rural market.
Totally.
And use your horizon to widen it and look at the markets beyond what you think is possible. And you got to absolutely be open-minded and not underestimate the opportunities. Yeah. And I think you're doing a great job, and that's very nice to hear the kind of excellent work that you're doing. Thank you very much. And now we go on to the second round quickly. I'll ask Sweta now to start. Just one key message. And the second point is, which sectors in the investment banking, which areas in investment banking, 2 or 3, you see as having great potential in this current environment?
So because it's 3:30 now, we have overshot the time. So
can I ask them? Okay, so shall we just have one key takeaways?
Yeah.
Since we are just a bit of I think let's do that, and then open up the market to open up the floor to question answers. Right? That will be fine. So I would like to listen to one key message that you want to leave, or a thought that you want to leave, each one of you. One key thought.
So if I have to just narrow down to one key thought that I want to leave with everyone, I will come back to how you started your session, Vijay, which is around purpose. So what I want to say is crises are harbingers of evolution. And it's very important time to reflect, reprioritize, and also innovate. So while everything around you is rapidly changing, you also need some anchors to sort of sail through these kind of situations well. And I think the anchor that serves us well, whether it's individual or organization, is our purpose. And the fact that your purpose is even more defined and tested during these difficult times, it's very important. For example, if a client and the client interest is on the top of our mind, then that purpose is even more tested and embedded during the time of crisis.
Right.
So do not lose sight of your purpose. If you work towards your purpose every single day, whether you're an organization or individual, irrespective of the tide around you. And like Ajay said, I was really impressed with his sense of purpose, very strong sense of purpose, which drives him and the passion around this whole industry. You will never fail. I mean, what crisis.
That's true. Very, very true. Thank you very much. And Vishwas, your thought, one line, please. Take away.
Yeah, so I will build on what I was saying earlier. I quite enjoyed what our other speakers had to say. I'll continue to build on what I had said earlier, which is that COVID has changed a lot, but it has not changed much. what is happening today is basically an acceleration of the trends that were already in place. And that is something that I am seeing across the sectors. So if for the people who are trying to make sense of what is happening around them, I would say the things that you see happening much faster now was already at play. And if you are looking to identify what could be the opportunities, then this could be one way of going about doing that.
Yeah, thank you very much. And Dave, your thought, one thought, please.
Yeah, so let me share the happiness equation because we started with success.
Yes.
See, there is we go through life searching for happiness, and we get distracted with work and organization, promotions and wealth and stuff. But if you really look at the happiness equation, it is just composed of two things, which is that what we have and divided by what we need. So, and I liked Ajay's example of 5% English speaking population. So what we have, we sometimes ignore it because we are not appreciative enough of what we have, whether it's a rich cultural heritage, as Ajay was talking about, the temple, or the artisanal, concepts that we have had as an economy. And we keep on expanding what we need. So, big house, big car,
Right.
and so on and so forth. So if you really want to maximize it, prune it down, and if you really want to focus on what you need, there is a research which is the longest research study by Harvard, which is what contributes to happiness, which is loving relationships, whether friend, brother, spouse, family members. Focus on that. And the message that I have for the students is that you are amongst the top 4% of India's billion plus population. You are very, very privileged and special. So you will succeed in life no matter what comes your way. And that's something that you need to appreciate and realize. You have.
Thank you, Dev. Thanks. And Ashutosh, one word, one line.
Okay, one word. Okay.
One line, one key theme.
Okay, so see, one quote which I want to share is, there's a quote by Richard Branson. There's no time like present, no better than today, and no righter time than right now. So
yeah, no
just
time better
this is a great opportunity for us to unlearn, relearn, and upgrade ourselves. And I have coined this term called asra. In Marathi, it's called the shelter. So I want the students to focus on these 5 capabilities or skills which could probably help them going forward. And I call it asra. It's called shelter in Marathi.
Right.
The first is be adaptable. So adaptability. Second is stick to your basics. Because I guess as we move forward, we generally forget the basics. Third, as you rightly pointed out, agility. Because today it doesn't matter whether you're the strongest, you have to be the fastest also. The fourth is resilience. It's very important to stay calm and strike at the right time. And fifth, I believe, is you need to hone your analytical skills, because I guess it will take you far away. That's what I think.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh. And Ajay, you've given us an elaborate account of, but you could summarize in one sentence.
Yeah, one sentence. I'd say, that, guys, this is never a better time, but this is the best probably to start thinking critically. And by critical thinking, I don't mean, over-analyzing your Excel spreadsheet, but start thinking critically on everything. Why is today Saturday? Why could not today be Sunday, right? Why are there 360 days? Why are we doing stuff like this? What really, amounted to COVID? So having said that, but the real key thing for me is critical thinking today.
Right. Yeah. Thank you very much. So before I hand over the floor for question and answer, so it is a great session from all of you here. And whether it's the purpose or accelerating of trends, the happiness equation, no time is better than now. And of course, ASRA, which Ashutosh very clearly and rightly pointed out. And no time is better than now. And then think creatively, think laterally, as Ajay pointed out. So your wealth of information and knowledge to reflect upon. And I'm sure this has been a great learning experience and time for all of us to look back, and especially the young minds. Thanks all once again for the excellent contributions. My thanks and gratitude to all of you for having joined us. May I ask the students now to take over and ask maybe 2-3 questions, Pragati.
Yes, sir.
So I can open the floor and the panelists can decide. I'll find out who would be the right person, or we can choose to answer based on the area that is being talked about. Yes, please. Let the questions start.
So I request Sheena to unmute herself and ask the question.
Yeah, please tell your name and then ask the question clearly. We'll try and accommodate just about 2-3 because we don't have much time, maybe 4 at best, not more than that. Okay, fine. Go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. My question is for Sweta ma'am.
What
That
is
you
your name,
said that
please? Excuse me, Sheena? Yeah.
yes, sir, Sheena Dlakha. And my question is for Shweta ma'am, that you said that investment banks are having a good time right now. But yesterday I read it somewhere that JP Morgan is saying that there should be a selling correction in the Nasdaq 100. So are the two related, and also is that due to the COVID and VUCA world, or just the normal Wall Street fluctuations?
Yes, sir.
So, well, I did not say that investment banks are having a good time because it's. I will be held against this statement.
We
Really.
wish they had a good time.
Okay, you're not getting your.
No, she's being very positive.
Yeah.
Well, I want to just correct the perception that it is a struggle for all the organizations and companies, and so for banking as well. But there are silver linings that obviously we are making some revenues from the volatility in the markets, and also the fact that there is a stretch on capital, and we're helping our clients through that. But obviously, the loan loss is extending, and the loan loss reserves are eating into our profitability and having implications on cost M&A activities down. So that's a summary of how investment banks are performing. Is there anything else, Sheena, that you were looking at? Sorry, my mind like really stopped. When you said,
does that answer your question, Sheena? You want any clarity on anything else?
Ma'am, I might have misheard, but that was it.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Vijay, sorry,
Yeah.
I will have to step
to leave?
out. Yes.
Okay,
But
thank you so much,
it was
Sweta.
really a pleasure being here and listening to all the co-panelists.
Yeah, it's a pleasure and wish to see you soon again with us.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please. A couple of more questions and then we can. Thank you, Sweta. Yeah.
So we are going with one more question. That is, please, Divyanshi, unmute yourself and ask your question.
Who's asking the question?
Divyanshi Verma.
Yeah, please ask your question. Yes, Devanshi, can you come on video?
About how work.
I think you have an issue with your bandwidth.
Pragati, can you just
Repeat
tell us
it.
what Devanshi was asking? I
Yeah.
think she's having network issues.
Yeah. What's the question, Pragati?
Yeah, I'll tell. Just wait a minute.
So I can speak on Devanshi's behalf.
Yeah.
So Devanshi was asking, so working from home has become a new norm of lately. Do you think Indian businesses will be moving towards having more virtual offices? This will definitely create many opportunities in rural and small towns in India, but how good it is going for an individual and how good it would be for businesses?
Ajay, would you like to take that question?
Yeah, could you repeat that question? I'm sorry, I thought.
Well, if I can summarize, she's saying, will working from home become the new normal? And if so, will it change the way we work?
Absolutely. So I think working from home is a definite for at least the next few months, if not more, right? Because you got to understand, no matter what the pandemic is, this is a psychological change. You know, there's a saying that, you know, it's a study, it takes 21 days to form a habit. We've been at this thing for like more than 6 months. You know, we are more than in a habit in this. No matter, and in fact, I wrote this status yesterday that getting into a habit or getting comfortable wearing a mask is actually quite discomforting when I think of the future, because I don't want it to be the future. But as much as we may not like it, masks are the new reality for at least, you know, the foreseeable future that we can talk about. So will it change the way we work? Absolutely, it has already, and it will continue to. I have personally gone for only about 5 meetings at most in the past 3 to 4 months. I've driven out, rarely, stopped eating out. We've ordered maybe like a couple of places, but it's really that. So from a pure consumption perspective, economy has definitely changed for the better, right? I was hoping that, the pollution levels will, have come down and, so the weather will improve, but I'm quite honestly surprised that, it's September and it almost feels like April. So I'm not sure, where that is going. But having said all that, the opportunities will actually improve. And here's the reason for it, because innovation comes from necessity. So necessity is the mother of innovation. If at all there was a necessity ever in the times that you lived, this is the most. So will we see necessity resulting in innovation? Absolutely. Is this only technological innovation? I don't think so. This actually needs a lot of other kinds of innovation. I've described these things in my book, so there's like 4 levels, which is Antrik, Mantrik, Tantrik, Yantrik. And, there are different levels of innovation that you are expecting to see now.
Okay.
I think that time is now. So we're definitely going to have a lot of improvement to that. We're going to see a lot of people will start to monetize opportunities that you had not seen before.
Right.
And I think
Thank you.
yeah.
Dr. Vancheshwar, I would like to add one line.
Yes,
Dr. Vancheshwar, I would like to add, in fact,
sure.
Even a company like Lupin is thinking about not just work from home, it's thinking something on the lines of work from hometown. Can you beat it?
They're already practicing it, Ashutosh?
No, we are thinking about it. We are planning to implement it. Like for the people who are not required to come to office, we are saying you move to hometown.
Yeah.
Imagine the repercussions of it. Probably
Yes.
the kind of what you can say retention that we would see would be tremendous. And,
So
and probably if a company like Lupin is doing it, probably more progressive companies would definitely do it. That's what my answer.
So I think companies are looking at things unimaginable in the last 6 months, but maybe it's something for the better.
Absolutely.
Do we have time for one more question?
100%.
Maybe one more last question?
I think we can move on now because it's 3:50 now. Yeah.
Okay, sure. We are okay?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah, any other point that you want to make, any of the panelists? If you want to add something? Yeah?
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It
all
was
the best.
wonderful having you all with us.
Pleasure.
Dave, Benny, pleasure.
Thank
We
you.
hope
Thank
to have
you.
you here more often and give your thoughts and ideas, exchange views with the budding minds here in the college. Institute.
Okay.
Yes, Shrey, you want to say?
Shikon, you wanted to say something? Yeah.
So we would like to request all the speakers to stay back for a little while. There's a little interaction with the Branding and Media Relations Committee after this. So we would appreciate it if you could give us a little more time of this.
Sure, they will want you to maybe post.
I would like to add something.
Yes, Varun.
On behalf of everyone virtually present here, I express my sincere gratitude to the guest speakers, Mr. Ajay Chaturvedi, Mr. Devabrat Mishra, Mr. Ashutosh Inamdar, Mr. Sweta Muradka, Mr. Balaji Vishwanathan, and Mr. Vishwas Mishra for taking out time from their busy schedules and sharing their thought-provoking insights with all of us. Post this session, we feel relatively more aware and equipped to understand and subsequently bring about innovative practices in today's business environment as the leaders of tomorrow. I would like to take this opportunity to once again thank our moderator, Dr. Vijay Vancheshwar, for consenting to be the moderator for the session and conducting the session in a highly coordinated manner. Thank you all.
Thank you, Varun. And Shrey, is that all? You want to say something?
Yeah.
Is that fine?
I would request the speakers to proceed to their breakout rooms.
You can't have a cup of tea, unfortunately, in the virtual board.
We would have loved to have.
That's a downside. Well,
yeah, that's one side of. We can have a virtual tea, maybe.
Yeah, let's just go and grab our own.
Yeah.
So we can join the breakout room now.
Pardon?
We can join the breakout room.
The link, so you can join.
You could see in this app. Join the breakout room. We can join now. All those panelists. Yeah, panelists.
So what do? We don't need to do anything.
No, just join. Click join.
Join breakout. Yeah.
Click join. Okay.
I would also like this opportunity to appreciate our sponsors, Innovators Way Technologies Private Limited as technology partner, DU Beat, an independent student newspaper, as digital media partner, RPSG as associate partner, MBA Trek as career and skill development partner, IOCL as co-sponsor, Health and Happiness Private Limited as e-commerce partner, Cengage as education partner, Devanka as fashion partner, Freehouse as Ice Tea partner, Multimind Creations as innovation partner, Punjab National Bank as loan partner, Due Express as media partner, Human Capital as media partner, Mint as new subscription partner, Radio City as radio partner, College Dunia as social media partner, Unity as student community partner, Campus Times Pune as youth partner, FinLadder, Tribe Concept, Umbrella Genics, Dr. Vaidya's, Cumbia Sportswear, Superior Wire Co., Unschool, EduPair, Your Space, Sake Publishing, and SG as our other partners. I would like to take this opportunity to commend all the guests, participants, speakers, professors, sponsors, students, and staff of IMI for making the session an unparalleled success, as well as the media persons for online coverage of the event. Thank you all.